Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
History remembers moments of extraordinary strength, skill, and determination. True greatness is forged by those who fulfill their destiny.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am John Stettin with Past the Wire. I have with me Ed DeRosa from Horse Racing Nation, Dan Cronin, fat bald guy racing, who ain't no more a fat bald guy, but FBG.
So bald.
We talked Kentucky Derby. We're going to talk Preakness. Before we get to that, though, we're gonna quickly address and take a little vote amongst the three of us that I would call well-educated opinions with our hearts in the right places when it comes to thoroughbred racing. So it'll be interesting to see how this little threesome shakes out here. But a lot of talk lately, and really every year lately, about the changing of the Triple Crown dates for the betterment of the game, for more rivalries, for the betterment of horses, and just for a lot of different reasons. So I'd like us all to weigh in quickly and vote. Dan, why don't you start? What's your thought on changing the dates, pros and cons, and where do you weigh in on that?
I think we should. I mean, if it's for the betterment of the horse, and that's the way everybody's moving, and hey, I was completely against getting rid of the whip, putting this stupid whip rule in. I think I might have been wrong on that. I mean, now that it's been in for a while, I think the jockeys have adjusted, and I don't think it's really changed much in racing. I'm completely against getting rid of Lasix for one race and not the other race, and I always make fun of it on my sheets, because one race you're allowed to have it on Saturday, the next race you're not, then you are in the next race, then the next race you're not. I mean, I think it's all ludicrous. But I think for the horse, running back in 2 weeks with high level horses, to me, we have to stop it. If it was a perfect world, and I know it's not, I would change the Preakness to Memorial Weekend, which is 4 weeks from the Derby. And then I would run the Belmont somewhere around July 4th weekend, preferably 4 weeks than 5 weeks. That's how I would do it. I don't like the whole stretch it out through the summer and get in the way of the Haskell and the Travers, but that way it wouldn't really get in the way of those races. Maybe they'd have to adjust a little bit, but I don't think they would. And I just think, 2 weeks is we're seeing. I mean, the only horse running back is Mage. I mean, nobody else is even running. So I think that's got to be tweaked. And yes, it's for the betterment of the horse. It is. And the money goblins need to just suck it up and realize that it needs to be moved.
Mr. DeRosa, where do you weigh in on that?
The change I would make would not be in the dates, but in the purses. I'd like, and maybe that doesn't work, and then we go to Dan's idea or someone else's, but $1.50 for the middle jewel, the Triple Crown, just isn't cutting it anymore. I mean, that Arkansas Derby is this purse. The Rebel is $1.25 million. This just is not money to entice people to race. And the Belmont, with it being unique with the 1.5 miles, I would say needs a bump as well. And I'm not saying this to name drop. I know between the three of us, we know everybody, but I want to cite my source. I spoke with Tom Durkin, who certainly knows a thing or two about the Triple Crown, and I asked him, would he move it? It's a hot topic, wanted to get his thoughts. And he said no. And one of the things that he pointed out, given his experience having called the race for NBC, was that calendar date matters. Now we know with the Derby, it's never moving. It's the first Saturday in May unless there's a pandemic. Like that's in stone. But the Preakness does have some permanency in that third Saturday in May slot. And when you start talking about Memorial Day or first Saturday in June, now all of a sudden, depending on the calendar, you're maybe 4 weeks, maybe 3 weeks from the Derby. It changes because just depending on with May having 31 days, where that first Saturday falls has an effect on where Memorial Day is in June. So to me, that really resonated with me that the Preakness has a place the third Saturday in May. NBC certainly likes it there. If they wanted it moved, it would be moved without a doubt. So to me, let's bump up the purse and see if that attracts a few more people. Horsemen know how to point for a race or races. So if the money's right, they'll have their horse ready for 2 races in 3 weeks.
I tend to agree with that. You know, for a long time, I had the traditionalist, hard-headed approach that leave it alone. And this year, I don't remember who it was. Somebody tweeted out a good argument for moving, and I said, you know, I'm really going to give it some hard thought, and I did. I deliberated long and hard on it, and I came back to how I originally felt, not moving the races, and this is why. You know, to me, I've been around the game a long time. I've seen what I think 4 Triple Crown winners, no, 5: Secretariat, Affirmed, Seattle Slew, American Pharaoh, and Justified. It's a doable thing, okay? Historically, when you look back at the Triple Crown, it's kind of always been a little bit streaky. You know, we had a whole bunch way back when Citation did it. Then we had that long drought until Secretariat did it. Then we had another, and then there were a couple right there with Affirmed and Seattle Slew. Then we had that long drought until American Pharaoh did it, and then Justified came back and did it close to that. You know, we've had a lot of horses, a lot that came really close. It's doable. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to take some great horsemanship to bring your horse back 2 weeks later and then 3 weeks later at the grueling Belmont distance. But it is doable for the right horse in the right barn and approached the right way. So I'm really for leaving it alone. I don't think that changing it. I think the problem with racing is too many stakes, too many different options, not enough horses. I don't know that moving the races apart more will create more rivalries and more competitiveness and bigger fields. We see small fields in a lot of the stake races now. It's just it's a sign of the times. I think racing has
John, I'll say one thing that I didn't mention. It also, by moving it, creates a way better undercard. Because think about all the horses that ran on Derby Day, and they're making them all run without Lasix now, which is, don't get me started. But if all those 40 or 50 or 60 horses could then come back to Baltimore or have the option to come back to Baltimore, I mean, I think Kenny McPeak brought one of them off the 2-week layoff. Other than that, nobody comes. I mean, I think you're not only excluding Derby horses, you're excluding every horse that ran on that card. And there was tons of stakes that Friday and Saturday. And you look at all these stakes at Pimlico, you would probably have 20, 30, 40 horses coming to run again if you ran 4 weeks later. So it's not just the
No, I
fair
agree with
point.
that.
Yeah, that's a fair point, but I'll throw this out there. Look at the Pimlico Special. I mean, I remember when the Pimlico Special drew a big field and was a prestigious race that top horses pointed for. It's not really that way anymore. It's almost a second or even third tier older horse race.
Yeah, it used to be on ABC the week before.
Right. I mean, it was an event, the Pimlico Special was, so, the game is changing, and I don't know that the changing of the spacing of those races is going to help it. So I'm a nay on that, and I might be in a minority. And Ed's a nay for maybe different reasons. We might be in a minority on that, but
Yeah.
I
I'd like to see more money added. I mean, you mentioned.
I like that
That's a good
idea.
idea, Ed. I
I
like
like that idea a lot, actually.
Obviously, winning the Triple Crown is sort of the crowning achievement, pardon the pun. But when I was, not to be that guy, the good old days, but I remember growing up when they had the Chrysler Triple Crown Challenge, and then I think it was Visa after that. It meant something to place in all three races. Like, that was an accomplishment in and of itself. And part of that reason is because there was some good money attached.
Right.
And now there are so many races, you both brought that up, but the Ali Sheba is a relatively new race on Derby weekend, and that certainly takes away from a race like the Pimlico Special. And you have a race like the Pat Day Mile, which is basically a reconstituted Derby trial. Well, 2 generations ago, the Derby trial was actually a Derby prep race.
Right.
Now it's a 1-turn mile race on the Derby undercard that gets a lot of other 3-year-olds that won't go to the Preakness, to Dan's point, 2 weeks later. Then on Belmont Day, you have the Easy Goer and Woody Stevens for 3-year-olds, 7 furlongs in a mile and a 16th. That absolutely takes away from the Preakness. It used to be if you had a 30-to-1 shot, you might take a shot because it's the Preakness and it's a big race. But now you have so many options to run for $500,000 where you can be, 7-2 instead of 30-to-1 for $1.5 million. So I get it from a business standpoint. Guys and gals are just making other decisions, but the tradition just isn't cutting the mustard anymore for the Preakness. It works for the Derby. The purse is fine for that. People want to be in the Derby, but for the Preakness, 3 million minimum.
I agree. I think that's a really good point, a really good idea, and I agree wholeheartedly with that. I never really looked at it that way, and then just staring at the purse, with the PPs up in the split screen on my computer here, and I'm like, yeah, 1.5 is light for the Preakness nowadays. You know what I mean? It's almost looks out of whack to me now that I'm thinking about it. With the purses of some other races and the prestige that this race really should have in the history that it has. 1.5 is really low. So without further ado, let's get to it. They're going to line up in the gate Saturday. We do have the Derby winner Mage coming back. So there is that possibility that we'll have a horse going for the Triple Crown. He's, we still got to run the race, but we've got him, and we've got some, interesting new shooters, in my opinion, as they like to call them. So why don't we start with Dan on the rail with National Treasure? What are your thoughts?
I mean, he's probably got a little chance. I mean, he's one of 4. I mean, there's 8 horses. I think 4 of them have no chance to belong in the race. National Treasure is one of the 4 that, if he did win, it wouldn't shock me. I mean, it's Bob Baffert. It's first time blinkers. It's on the rail in a race that don't have any speed in it. I mean, he's going to send him, and if he's good enough, maybe he'll keep going. I don't think he will, because I think that monster on the outside that we'll get to later is going to stalk him into the ground, but he's one of 4 with a chance. At least he does have the numbers. I mean, I've got all the Rags numbers here too, with the Briz and Byers, and he's light. He's going to have to run. He's going to have to run the race of his life, but he's not that far off that if Mage don't show up, that he doesn't have a chance.
What are your thoughts, Ed?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar, maybe a little more bullish than Dan, but he's certainly disappointed his share of people. I mean, he's only been favored in one of his 5 starts, but at 3 to 5, he didn't get the job done in a 5-horse sham. I was shocked that he was so far back in a 5-horse field. That group, Johnny V's stayed loyal though, so I appreciate that. Like, this just feels like a more spirit type horse where the light bulb's gonna go on at some point. For more Spirit, it was the Met Mile as a 4-year-old. Maybe with Bob wanting to make a big splash back on the Triple Crown scene, this could be it. I don't think any of us would be surprised. Certainly, as Dan said, he's sort of one of the ones in a field where there's, you know, some not one of the ones. 4-1 morning line, which I think might be right. I mean, maybe he's 5-1, but he'll be around there. The value just isn't there given the losses, but he's certainly dangerous. I mean, I wish I had some other clever opinion in here and I would say, oh, he could be hooked up with him, but I just don't think the price is right, even though you know he can beat you.
I got a little different take on it.
All right.
I think he's the horse to beat. I really do.
No, I mean, if he had run in the juvenile or sham like some thought he would, we'd absolutely be talking about him.
And I'm one of the ones who thought he would. You know, out at Keeneland that entire week, if I had to say there was one 2-year-old, well, dirt 2-year-old, because the Godolphin and Aidan O'Brien horses looked ridiculous all week long, even the 2-year-olds. But on the dirt, if there was one 2-year-old that really caught my eye, that was sitting on a monster race, it was him. Okay, and he was the second in command in that barn to Cave Rock at the time, and not even thought to really be in his league. But when you looked at the two of them, just naked eye, he really, really looked good and like he was sitting on a big race. And based on that, I thought he ran disappointing, honestly. And in the sham, I made no excuse. I thought just a flop, you know, couldn't figure it out at all. In the Santa Anita Derby, same thing. He really, really disappointed. And then you know, when I looked at the Thoroughgraph numbers and I handicapped the race and came up with the opinion that he's probably going to go for the lead on a rail. And I looked at his pattern on Thoroughgraph, and to me, it's all about patterns when you look at those kind of numbers, you know. Maybe not so much with Byers and Briss and other figures, but with Thoroughgraph and Ragozins, to me, it's about the patterns. He's got a pattern that suggests he's going forward and past his best 2-year-old race. His fastest 2-year-old race puts him faster than everybody except Mage. If he goes past that, then he's smack in it. Okay. We know how Bob's horses are when they're on the lead. They get brave. They're tough to get past. We saw it with Authentic. We saw it with Medina's Spirit. We saw it with so many horses over the years. Johnny's never won the Preakness that I can remember. You know, Ed, I'm not a stat guy. I go off memory, so I could be wrong. You probably know the answer to that, but I don't think Johnny's ever won the Preakness.
That's right.
He finally won his Breeders' Cup Classic for Bob on the lead. I think he's going for the lead. I think there's going to be a lot of people saying, how did I let this horse beat me, when he turns for home with 2 lengths and just doesn't stop?
No, I mean, if he's on the lead,
I rate him very high, very high.
he's on the lead going into the first turn, I'd be begging for in-race betting, because to me, that's we haven't seen that yet. I mean, he's pressed the pace. Even, well, he won Gate to Wire on debut, but even in the American Pharaoh, that fast 2-year-old figure, he was just off it. I'd love to see him on the lead here. If I were a backer of his, for sure. It's just, why haven't we seen that yet?
Well,
He better pop the gate. He better pop the gate.
He's on the rail. He better pop the gate, but he's putting blinkers on. He goes back from, nothing against Tim, but he goes back from Tim to Bob. Bob ain't going there for crab cakes. And I thought there was something very funny in the interview with Jimmy Barnes the other day. 9 out of 10 times, if you watch Bob's interviews, okay, and you watch how they talk about jockey instructions, they'll always say things like, well, you know, Johnny's experienced, he'll play it by the break, hopefully we'll get a good jump, he'll know what to do. This year, in this race, Jimmy said Bob will give him the instructions. To me, that was, Bob's going to tell him to go to the lead and see what happens. So
yeah, I think this outfit learned their lesson years ago when California Chrome would have won the Triple Crown if his rider would have went to the lead. He grabbed him and it cost him the Triple Crown. And I really believe that's why American Pharoah won it the next year. Same rider, same trainer. And they said, hey, we ain't
Different
playing
trainer.
around this time. You drew the inside in the Preakness, and they sent him like a banshee as soon as the gate opened. And they did the same thing in the Belmont. He wasn't rating him. He was going right to the lead. Hey, National Treasure may make the lead, and if he does, he's dangerous. Like I said, he's got that chance because he could be on the lead. I'm just the one on the outside could be really, really special.
Yeah, we'll get to him. Chase the Chaos. Ed, why don't you start with him? Any thoughts, Dan?
Well, I mean, I'm hoping the Preakness this year gets bet like last year. I had a lot of egg on my face when I insisted on Twitter. I mean, I was just beside myself that these odds couldn't possibly be the whole pool when Fenwick was 12, 15 to 1 as the day went on. It blew my mind. I don't care who won the Derby. If it was 1,000 to 1 horse, the fact that Fenwick was 15 to 1 in last year's Preakness, I just insisted that they hadn't dumped all the money in the pool yet. And I was wrong, and I had to own that. And I bring that up because I would love to see this race bet in remotely the same manner, because any dollar this horse takes helps the price on horses who actually have any chance. I'd be in the race too if I own the horse. They got their bid from the El Camino Real. I have no problem with guys and gals taking their shot and wanting to be a part of the tradition and the scene. But this would be an absolute shocker in any of the paying positions for me.
I second that. I agree wholeheartedly. Dan?
Yeah, he's probably most likely to run last. Might pick up a horse or two if they stop, but I couldn't even use this horse in supers. And I know it's an 8-horse field. I mean, somebody's got to run fourth. Wow. I mean, I know guys like to take the long shots in the fourth hole, superfecta wise. So, you know, if somebody wanted to do that, I wouldn't be mad at them, but this horse just does not figure at all.
Okay, that brings us to our Kentucky Derby winner, Mage. Can't take it away from him. Won the Derby off 3 starts. I'll start with him. You know, he's in a unique position, not only being the Derby winner, but he's the one horse in the race that, in my opinion, can actually regress a little bit and doesn't have to run as good or as fast as he did based on Thoroughgraph in the Preakness as he did in the Derby, and can still win. He run a 0 on the Thoroughgraph in the Derby. Nobody's come close to that yet. He can go back to a 1 or a 2 and still be right there in this race. And generally speaking, a lightly raced 3-year-old that has the kind of pattern he has, he's never regressed yet. He hasn't regressed yet at all. He's equaled or stayed the same and gradually climbed, which is not that big jump where they tend to regress, or some people say bounce off. He's steady as a rock. And I really have to commend Gustavo Delgado and his son, because and Ramiro, they've made every right call with this horse, from going, you know, from the maiden into the Fountain of Youth, off the subpar race, still going forward into the Florida Derby, not being able to face Forte in the Derby. Turned out they didn't have to, but they showed up and they won. And you know, people that say that, well, if Forte was in the race, he wouldn't have won. I think, you know, unless you have a crystal ball that I've never seen, nobody knows that. So I mean, Mage, a lot of respect. I think he's a really, really nice colt. I think he's getting good at the right time, and I think that he is the most likely one to run past National Treasure and anybody else that's on the lead in the stretch, if that's what happens. I just a ton of respect for this colt and the way the horse has been handled. And one thing I noticed, if you watch, and I've got a video of it on our channel, but you could probably catch it anywhere. When he got off the van at Pimlico, okay, Gustavo Delgado was with him, walked the shed row with him, never took his eyes off him, was with him every second, watching every move this horse made. And I've got to assume he's done that in the time from the Derby till now, which is why he's in the race. He wasn't one of those trainers that was on the phone, that was hustling other owners, that was giving interviews. I mean, he was, no disrespect meant, he was dirty, in the barn, working, hands-on, with his horse, in the stall, on the shed row, with the groom. And I really respect and like to see that kind of old school horsemanship with a horse. We don't see a lot of that. I think they know their horse. I think he's going to show up again, and I think they're going to have to do some running to hold off Mage, which is no big deal. He's going to be what, 8-5, Ed? 3-2, maybe? I don't know.
7-5. is what I
Okay.
would say.
And you know, so I mean, there's no revelation there, but he's in my opinion, he's legit and serious, and he's going to show up again with a big race. What do you think, Ed?
No, I agree. I was wrong in the Derby. You know, I bought into the too much too soon. He actually had it sounds like, I haven't seen Thoroughgraph. Sounds like he had a bigger forward move on Ragozin, which was part of the reason I was a little nervous about, you know, even off 5 weeks in the Derby. Not having raced at 2 was big for me. You know, 0 for 10 since Justify, never better than 10th. Justify was just, you know, a generational type horse. And I was wrong. I mean, if he ran, I would say along with 2 fills. I mean, other than those 2, Angel of Empire was fine, but you know, my horse Tapit Trice certainly had the setup, and you know, wasn't good enough from where he had to break. And you know, I ended up taking too short of a price in hindsight. Mage, I'm never getting to in the Derby for reasons I stated with the 2-year-old stuff. Impossible at this point not to recognize him as the horse to beat here. I will say though that if I wasn't willing to go for 15-1 when he clearly had talent, he clearly had a fast number in the Florida Derby, I'm not going to take 7-5 2 weeks later. You know, I had concern about 4th start in 3 months 2 weeks ago. Now it's the 5th start in 3 months, 3.5 months 2 weeks later. So the price isn't good enough for me. I am looking elsewhere, but you know, if we were talking about him being 5-2, because there were a few others in here that would take money, I'd seriously consider taking him on top, but at 7-5, I have to pass.
Would he? Let me ask you an odds question, Ed, because you're good at this stuff. If Forte was able to run back into Preakness and did, would he be the favorite?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think if you had asked me that 4 weeks ago and said, hey, like, let's say they knew Forte wasn't going to run in the Derby, we're going to go for the Preakness, I'd say there was a good chance of it. For whatever reason, even before all this stuff swirled the day of the race, and then of course the positive with the hopeful Drake broke that story and how that unfolded. Even before that, the shine was off for whatever reason. And there was talk that he might not even be favored in the Derby. And in some of the Oaks Derby double pools, he wasn't. So
Interesting.
I think with that in mind and the way Mage ran, I mean, this wasn't a Derby where he benefited from 4 horses getting taken out, bad trips, etc. He was awesome. I mean, there's just no other way to say it. I mean, it was one of the better Derby performances that I can remember. And they usually do run it back in the Preakness, so maybe 7-5 ends up looking like a gift. But given that my concern 2 weeks ago was how much he had done already this year, that's still in play. So at a shorter price, I have to look elsewhere.
Dan, you think Forte would be the favorite?
Yeah, I do. And I think the one thing that everybody seems to be missing about the Derby, and hey, all respect to Mage for running me down, costing me 40,000 for the second straight year. I'm in front in the lane. I think, my God, I'm gonna win. Everybody's gonna think I'm a genius. Two Phils is gonna win. I called this 2 weeks ago before they depleted the field. And of course, he ran me down. But everybody forgets this. Practical Move was in everybody's top 6 or 7. Skinner was in most people's top 10. Forte was in everybody's top 1, 2, or 3. The field got depleted by 3 contenders, not one, 3 contenders. So when you were looking at the race, we all threw out 10 horses. Come on. Well, now you threw out 3 more because they threw in 3 horses that had no chance. So now the race was down to maybe 5 or 6 horses that had any chance to win. I mean, let's face it, the rest of the field looked awful for a normal Derby. We always have also rans, but we didn't have, after the 3 horses scratched, we had way less horses that actually looked like they could win. And I even added Mage into my pick 5s, didn't have him in my original pick 5s. The 3 horses I had as the top 3 B horses, scratch, and then Forte, who I had as an A horse, scratch. So I moved Mage up to my top B horse.
It's a good
And
point.
I actually sat there Saturday morning with Angel of Empire, who I didn't like at all. And we talked about it and said, well, do I put Angel of Empire or Mage on more tickets? What do I do here? Because I don't like Angel of Empire at all. And I kept staring at Mage with all the same concerns that Ed had. But then I kept staring at that rag number and I was like, boy, 11 minus to 11 minus to 6 plus. Can he run another 6 plus? Because without Forte in the race, nobody else can. So I just tossed him on some tickets. You know, I didn't like him. He was like my 4th horse, I think. Then I used, 4 or 5 of them in the Derby. And so I ended up hitting some pick 5s, but he wasn't one of my main horses. And I keep thinking now, everybody knew who I said should have been in the Derby, and the point system stinks and they need to change it. That monster on the outside, Mage ain't seen a horse like this yet, in my opinion. Will he be able to run past this monster? I don't know. And here's the last thing I'll say about
foreshadowing.
Mage. I do think you got to respect Mage, but how many horses with this running style, Monarchos comes to mind, Mind That Bird comes to mind, that looked really good in the Derby and then came back into Preakness and couldn't make that run. It's hard to make that run from way back. Maybe I'm still mad at Mage for costing me my biggest bet of the year on Bourbon Resolve, his first time out, when I didn't know anything about Mage, and I was getting 5-2 on Bourbon Result and bet with both hands. And all of a sudden his first time starter takes the lead. I'm like flipping my program. Who the hell is this?
Who's that?
Yeah, my
that
God. And
move.
then Bourbon Resolve just eases up like he's going to win easy on the turn. And all of a sudden this horse rebroke on me. And I'm like, what barn is this? Who is this? So maybe it's still that, but I think what's going to happen is Mage is going to make his run, and it's going to be kind of like that Curlin Street Sense thing. Can he get by with that last thrust, or is First Mission going to be good enough to hold him off? That's the way I look at this race. So I can't throw him out. I mean, if you're betting tries, exactas, pick 4s or 5s, you can't throw him out, but I'm not singling him. I can tell you that. I'm not singling him.
Okay. Anybody using Coffee with Chris?
Nah,
No.
he's a front runner, and we're talking about National Treasure hopefully going. And if that's the case, there's absolutely no chance.
Yeah, I don't think he's fast enough to run with National Treasure if Johnny want him to,
Maybe for 2 furlongs.
Yeah, maybe. Red Route 1, Joel Rosario riding for Steve Asmussen, got in off another one of these races that came out of the woodwork, the Bathhouse Row. Oaklawn Park guarantees a berth into the Preakness. Any thoughts on him at all, Dan?
Well, he's consistent. I mean, on the rag sheets and on the buyers, I mean, he's consistent 12, 12, 12 on the rags. I mean, he's probably going to run another 12, 12 minus 11. Could that be third or fourth? I guess, but Joel won't stop riding. You know, he'll turn for home and try to get him going. And, you know, he's a good try super horse. For the win then, no, I wouldn't use him in any pick 4s or 5s. No.
Your thoughts, Ed, on Red Route 1?
Yeah, I agree. I think if he was a little more forward, knowing that he's so consistent, you know, he really has no pattern because he's 11 3/4 the last 3 races. Before that was a 13. So you get what you get. Given his running style, though, a win would really surprise me. I mean, there's not nearly enough pace in here to think, oh, this could collapse and he's the only one running at the end. So I sort of agree with Dan. I mean, the trouble, though, is everyone else sees that too. And he's, you know, they'll be, oh, 12-1, I'll use him underneath. Well, in a pari-mutuel game, when everyone's doing that, you're not really picking up any value. So the next horse we'll get to figures to come from the back. I think is maybe a little better in my mind. They'll probably be similar prices, but I think Red Route 1, given that he's sort of been on the trail, is trained by Asmussen with Joel up, might be a little more bet. So for that reason, I'm willing to just try to fade him and think that the 12 just won't get there underneath. But certainly he's dangerous as someone who's going to run late. But I'm gonna try to beat him out of the number.
Yeah, I'll start with Perform, the next horse, because I find him a little interesting. You know, he looks too slow to win for me. But you know, if you watch the Federico Tessio, visually he ran an impressive race. He had a tough trip. That was the first time he was ever taken well back off the pace, 10 lengths off the pace. His other races, he kind of stalked and chased and really didn't have that finish. So maybe they kind of figured out something with him. And, you know, he looks to me like a horse at 15-1 or maybe better with Fergal Lynch helping the price, even though it's Shug. You know, he looks like a horse that can definitely be running at the end and get into the tries and super and maybe make it a little bit interesting. So of the long shots that really don't look like they have a chance to win, he's the one that for me looks like he can get into the super or the try. I wish, because I like prices and I like to have some kind of hope for that score. I wish I could find a scenario that makes him a win candidate. I just can't get there. But I can definitely get to him running a good race and you know, being a part of you know, the super or the try, or maybe in the second slot in the exacta somehow. I mean, his race to Mage off the layoff, first time out as a 2-year-old, wasn't that bad. First time out as a 3-year-old, rather, wasn't that bad. And he really, I don't think, wanted to sprint at all. I think we know that now. And he chased Mage, only got beat 5 lengths. In the race you're talking about, you like the other horse, Dan, the Bourbon horse. So that's really not a bad race when you look at it, you know. And after that, all he did was win. So, you know, maybe he's getting better. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with these getting better. He could hit the try or super. I wish they'd put him on grass. I mean, I like the little bit of grass breeding, and I like the fact that once they dropped him way back twice, you know, there's a lot of grass races out there for decent 3-year-olds that, you know, can close. And I'd take a shot with him on the turf down the road. But for this race, try super type. I wouldn't put him in the exacta, but you know, if you're trying to hammer tries with the main ones on top, he'd be one of them. I'd put third and hope that he ran third. And like Ed said, I'd hope the 6 beat the 5 for third, because I think the value for the try-in super is going to be with the 6 and not the 5.
What do you think of this horse, Ed?
Yeah, I'd say we agree. And as I said, for me, I agree with the morning line. I think he'll be a tick higher price wise than Red Route 1. So for that reason, he's a little more intriguing, is sort of maybe the key you try to get in there for third or fourth. You know, Ragozin wise, he's not as fast as the obvious contenders. But he was on the rail the whole time in the Tessio, and I'm not a big replay guy. You know, my peers, Scott Shapiro and Emily Gullickson, to name two, they watch replays. I read their stuff, so that, and Benny South Street. So those are, I kind of trust them. But I did watch the Tessio back because Emily insisted on it. And even knowing the result at the 8th pole, he looked absolutely hopeless.
Right.
And that has to count for something in my mind, that he still got the job done. So to me, that means he's going to be running late. And one thing we haven't mentioned yet, Connections have put up 150 grand to be here. And now Will Farish and the Phipps family, that's not a lot of money to them, but
Yeah.
Nevertheless, they didn't make all their money because they spend frivolously. So I think there's something to that. And for Shug to say, yeah, let's go for it, I think the horse is going to run his race good enough to win, but in a head-to-head with Red Route 1 to spice up the verticals a little more than if Red Route 1 were to get there, I'm willing to bet on that.
Okay. Blazing Sevens, Chad trying to do something that he has done twice. Opt out of the Derby with cloud computing, early voting, both won the Preakness, opted out of the Derby with Blazing Sevens, running in the Preakness. Irad Ortiz, who's probably got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder from what happened in the Derby and how things have been going lately. Thoughts, Mr. Dan?
I think he's one of the 4 that can win. I mean, we named National Treasure and Mage, and the 7 and 8 are the other 2 that can win. Blazing Sevens to me is a great pattern. Sorry about that. It's a great pattern. Because third off the layoff is always a great thing. You know, he's only run twice since November. Yes, he flattened out in the lane against Tapatrace and Verifying, but maybe he was supposed to off of just one bad start that didn't probably really give him a whole lot. I mean, they were jogging him the last half a mile at Gulfstream and a Fountain of Youth. So, you know, he could move forward here, and he's got a 10 in his last rag. I mean, probably around a 6 or 7 is going to win this race. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he could run a 98 or 99 buyer, you know, a 6 or 7 rag. He could come running. He's got the best rider on the planet. He's got Chad Brown getting him ready. He's got a chance. If you didn't want to take one of the 2 favorites, that's who I would take, would be Blazing Sevens.
Mr. DeRosa?
Well, I would take National Treasure beyond the top 2. Blazing Sevens does scare me though, a lot for the reasons Dan stated. That number in the Bluegrass was pretty close to his 2-year-old top, Ragozin wise. So that's usually a potent signal for 3-year-olds that if they can push through that, you know, like Dan said, that could be good enough to win, unless, you know, Mage pairs again, might be invincible. But to me, what Chad has done with the 2 horses and now this third, I think somewhat speaks to not so much the soundness of thoroughbreds, which is something you hear about with the Triple Crown, but just the training methods. And Chad learned this, I'm sure, in part from his former boss, Bobby Frankel, as a Sheets trainer. With the time off, you just get better numbers, and the era of running in an allowance to prep for a series of graded stakes where you're going to run 3 or 4 times over 2 months is over, because now you point for one race 4, 5, 6 weeks later to get that big number and try to win, and the purses compensate you for that, whereas they didn't before. And we see that, I think, in part with what Chad's done with the Preakness. And maybe we'd see it a little more if this purse were higher. I'm sure that, well, I mean, Romans is a Louisville guy, maybe not the best example. He wants to be in the Derby every year. But, a horse like Cyclone Mischief could have maybe benefited for pointing to this race. He ran a fine Florida Derby, nothing wrong with it.
Right.
And we've seen Chad work it to his advantage. And similar to my comments on National Treasure, not going to be surprised if Blazing Sevens wins. Certainly agree he's one of the four. But again, it comes down to price. I'm just not over the moon with 6-1. It's not exciting to me.
Interesting. I got a little different take than you guys on the race. And only because it's a short field and one of the horses that I think you can't get around is Mage. So I've kind of put myself in a corner where I've got to be very concise in the Preakness, and you guys are talking about 4, and I theoretically agree there are 4 horses that can win, but I'm going to narrow that down to 2. And Blazing Sevens is not going to make that cut. And that's difficult for me because I respect Chad. The first thing I said was that he's done this twice, you know what I mean, with 2 other horses. And I bet both of them. I bet Cloud Computing when he won, and I made a very big bet on early voting when he won, with a lot of confidence, both of them. I would not be betting Blazing Sevens with confidence at all. So, as much as I love Chad and he's a friend and I respect him and his horsemanship as much as anybody in the game, I just don't see enough from this horse on paper and in his patterns to suggest to me that he can jump up and win this race. And if he did, I would wait till Sunday because his phone would be blowing up Saturday, and I would call Chad and say, man, you just really did it again, man. Hats off. But I don't on paper and, in all my visuals, and I just don't see him coming out the winner. I definitely think he can run an improved race. I definitely think he can come running and get a piece. But I don't think he's getting past Bob's horse on the rail, and I don't think he's out finishing Mage on Saturday. And that's just my take. Now, if he does, I love Chad. He's a friend. I'll be happy. I'd love to see him do this 3 times, and I'll definitely write about it, and hats off to him. But I will not be able to claim that I picked him in that article. So that's my thoughts on him. Now, Dan, I will let you start with the monster on the outside, First Mission, who you and a lot of other people are extremely high on, and is definitely, we'll let Ed weigh in on this, but definitely going to be the horse that gets bet hard into Mage, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, more because there's not a whole lot of other options, which frustrated. I was hoping this be a 14-horse field and I could get 5-1 on First Mission. I was betting on First Mission in the Derby. If he would have gotten the Derby, I would have bet on him in the Derby. I bet my lungs on this horse on April 15th, which covered several weeks of bets for me. He didn't even get a great trip in that race. The rider on Arabian Lion kind of played games with him a little bit, and he had to come through the rail. And, if they'd have went a mile and 1/8, he'd have win by 5. But I just think this horse is really, really good. I don't think he's come anywhere close to his top number yet. When you talk about patterns, I got 10 plus, 10 plus, 9. I mean, that tells me he might move to a 5 or 6 without even blinking. So nobody else can get near Mage to me on numbers except this horse. And I think he's going to get the perfect setup because I think National Treasure is going to go. He's going to fall right in behind him. He's just going to jog on the outside of the track where you want to be at Pimlico. He's not going to get anywhere near the rail. He's never going to be near the rail. Saez, if you like Irad 1, then Saez has to be 2. If you don't like Irad, then Saez has to be one. He's one of the best 2 riders on the planet. He loves to be forward. If you could name a style of horse that fits Saez, it's this horse. So I just think when they turn for home, he's going to inhale National Treasure. He's going to start to be about 3 pass off that fence. He's going to start to draw away, and Mage is going to have to run him down. He is not going to stop. Mage will have to run him down a lot. Mage ran down 2 fills, but let's face it, you could see the clock. 2 fills was just stopping. He was really stopping. So, I don't know if that's a lot of visual to mess with your head or what, but I think this could be one of those where First Mission takes the lead and the announcer gets real excited in the lane because Mage is struggling to get to him. And it could be a photo, but at 5-2, 3-1 to me, that's plenty of value, especially in pick 4s and 5s when half the country is going to single Mage, and hopefully we can get, a way higher price on the pick 4s and 5s. And I like the late pick 5. I think the late pick 5 is a solid looking play on Saturday, because there's a couple races that are really tough.
And First Mission for you is a single, I'm assuming.
On probably 75% of my tickets, I'll single him.
Okay, see, that's where we differ. If I was that strong on a horse, there ain't nobody else on any of my tickets. But that's just me. Ed, you know that. That's just how I
Oh,
play.
yeah. No, I'm probably a little more in Dan's camp in that style of play, and that's without looking at the sequence. But if I feel really strongly somewhere else in the sequence, especially about like a $10 or $12 horse, I'll allow myself some backups even when I really love a horse. Like, I mean, if there's 2 $20 horses, I don't want to get beat by Mage, I guess, is sort of
Right.
the way I look
No,
at it.
I understand.
But
Exactly.
I get what you're saying too. And, in the long run, probably is a little better, but.
It's interesting. We talked about this horse on our Derby show. And one of the things that we brought up was what Brad Cox has said. And I remember, us kicking around, was it a knock on his other horses when he said that First Mission might wind up his best 3-year-old. And here's a guy that's got 4 horses in the Derby, and First Mission wasn't one of them. And here he is in the Preakness. So before we get your opinion on him, Ed, I will say this. Yeah, he looks like a really, really nice horse. Okay. And if he winds up the top 3-year-old of the year, it will not surprise me at all. But here's why I'm not betting on him Saturday, and why he doesn't get in my top 2 when I narrowed it down from the 4 when I'm on National Treasure and Mage. And this is it. In addition to looking at the patterns, and I'll talk about his pattern in a minute, but I look at how I think the race is going to shape up. Okay. I think that National Treasure goes for the lead on the rail. Okay. That other speed horse that we mentioned, I don't think really factors in for too long. I think that the one that's on the outside and's got to chase is Saez, who's not going to want to let this horse get away. Okay. I don't think he's ever chased a horse that's potentially as fast as National Treasure. Bob's horses generally don't quit without a fight. So he's either going to have to engage early to try and get by him, or assure getting him, or let him go a little bit and try and save. And both of those scenarios, I don't think help him. I think they either help National Treasure, or if he engages earlier, I think that they help Mage and soften the 2 of them up. So the way the race shapes up for him, unless he's really special, which he might be, and I've been wrong before. I'm willing to take that chance, unless he's really special and up for the same thing that we worried about Mage. 3 starts close together. I'm not going to say last time he was thrown to the wolves. I'm going to say now he's really being thrown to the wolves. So this is the first time against, quote, the big boys. Same concerns you have about Mage, you kind of almost got to have about First Mission. So as the second choice, getting bet into the favorite, who I think you have to respect, that's a knock to me. The other thing is his pattern on Thoroughgraph is a little different than the one on Ragazines. His pattern on Thoroughgraph, his first time out, he runs a 2.5. He regresses to a 4 in his second start. Okay. I don't like that. Okay? It's just a small knock, but it's a knock. Then he comes back and he doesn't even go past his best number. He runs a 3.25. So he runs a 2.5, 4, 3.25. Okay. 3.25 on Thoroughgraph is not going to win this race. A 1 or a 0 is. So he's got to go 2 points forward in order to win. He hasn't run as fast as National Treasure yet. He hasn't run as fast as Mage yet. So between that and the way I see the setup, he can beat me, you know. He's gonna have to prove that he's all that, because the way I read it, he has to be all that in order to overcome those two little knocks. But they're two little knocks in a small field. That's you know, when you get down to those three and even Blazing Sevens, it's small but ultra competitive between those four, and all four have kind of question marks. Ed, you brought out some good question marks on Mage. I think they also apply to First Mission. Dan, you brought out some good question marks on National Treasure. So did you, Ed. You know, so all of the top contenders, there's nobody in here that really we all could say, you know what, there's just no knock or question mark on this one. We all, you know, had some kind of question mark. So I'm gonna, just because it's a small field and Mage is a must use to me, I'm gonna take, you know, a stand against Blazing Sevens and First Mission and make them prove it on a racetrack. So that's my take on that.
Well, it's there's definitely a difference between the two designer figs, so to speak.
Which is interesting also, very interesting.
Yeah. Now, First Mission, even on Ragazine, doesn't have that big move forward that Mage had. So from you know, didn't race at 2, only 3 starts in the last 2.5 months standpoint, he hasn't really moved forward, which is a positive and a negative. He hasn't emptied the tank, but at the same time, you know, there's concern with these numbers, and Red Route 1 would be in this category where, okay, this might be it. Maybe, you know, 10-10-9, that's his ceiling, and that's not good enough to win. So I'm more in the Dan camp, though, admittedly. I think there is a potential for a move forward, especially with this pedigree. I mean, it's incredible for this type of race. Street sense out of him, the Dalia Doro mare. I looked up the Dan pedigree. You know, they all run routes going back. So distance not an issue. And I think something Dan said that resonated with me is this horse isn't stopping. Once he goes, he will get the distance, and he will get it at the rate he was when they hit the quarter pole. So that makes him dangerous. I think if the public goes nuts on Mage, you know, the Derby winner will look good doing it. And in the win pool, he's even money, which I don't think will happen, but it's possible. Then
Right.
Maybe First Mission ends up being the play. I have him at 3-1 on my fair odds. So I really need Mage to be steaming to have any chance of getting that. But to me, that's the only hope for some value in the race. So not as bullish as Dan, but when I think about how this race might be bet, I think First Mission has the best chance of offering a price I'm comfortable with.
Interesting. And you know, I don't.
Here's something none of us have mentioned. We all assume National Treasure is going to make the lead. Saez is light years better out of the gate than Johnny V. Let's just be honest. They're both great Hall of Fame riders, but I'm just talking the first 50 yards. If he catches a flyer out of the gate, he's not rating First Mission. If he sees an opportunity to bank that turn and bury National Treasure in mud, he's going to do it.
Well, I will say this to that. Okay, we don't bet with paper tickets anymore. I bet on my phone. Okay, but if I was at the track and bet paper tickets on Mage or National Treasure, or was alive with only those two in the pick 4 or pick 5 or pick 6 or whatever it may be, and Luis cleared and had to lead into the first turn, I would tear those tickets up right
Exactly.
then and there. Unfortunately, with technology today, you can't delete that off your phone once they come out of the gate. I've
I'd be
actually
reaching for
tried.
the cigar.
I've tried. I said, you know what? I'm knocked out of this stupid pick 4. I wonder if I could delete this. And nah, it just doesn't work. It says call customer service when you try that. But so I get it. You know what I mean? If that happens, then you know my race is over. You know, I'm really banking on National Treasure clearing and being, you know, 2 lengths in front into that first turn.
Sure.
And really, horsebacking out of the gate. If that doesn't happen, then I've got to hope Mage is good enough to close and beat everybody. And I will have my eyes on the Royal Blue for sure, because I know, I saw everything you guys said, and there's nothing I disagree with theoretically. And I think, I wouldn't be surprised if he's as nice as any or as good as any of the 3-year-olds by the end of the year.
It's a shame there aren't a few more in here, because I mean, I think of the 4 contenders, which we kind of agree they're the 4. What we do with them, some disagreement. I mean, it's a compelling race from a dynamic standpoint, with National Treasure, what First Mission does, and then Blazing Sevens and Mage behind them. But with no other, wise guy horses or pot sweeteners, it's hard to really get excited about what you can do from a wagering standpoint, which, as little as we talked about him as a win candidate, that's where horses like Red Route 1 and Perform come in. Because I mean, you mentioned second, even Jonathan, with Perform. I mean, that would truly allow you to blow things up a little bit, as much as you can in an 8-horse race. So,
Right.
you're gonna have to gamble a little bit which horse you want to slot in there in the top 3, but you can't play the top 4 to be the trifecta, because
Right. No,
there's
exactly.
nothing there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
You play the double into the Arabian race.
That's
I'm gonna pass on that too, man. I don't think I've ever, in all the years I've
I'm a
been doing
sicko. I'll have a
I
double.
don't think I've ever bet an Arabian race.
when I played Sam Houston, I would play the Arabians.
Yeah. And you want to know something else funny that we were talking about things like that? I think I bet possibly 1 or 2 harness races in my entire life. Once was when I was a kid and my mom and dad, they used to sometimes go to Yonkers Raceway. And once they dragged me with them and I had to. And then once Saratoga at the harness track. I don't even know how fast harness horses run a mile. If you ask me to save your life, how fast do they run a mile or a quarter? I don't even know.
Some good ones are
153
like a
and
minute
1.
48 now.
I don't even know.
I got a question for you, Jonathan.
I'm ready.
What do we need to win this weekend to open that Louis behind you?
Well, really nothing. I got an open bottle behind the bar. So when when that one's finished, this one gets
That one's next. All right. Yeah, I've been looking at it.
Right.
I've been giving it the Aaron Judge side look.
The other one's about 3/4 done. So when that one's done, we're opening this one win, lose, or draw. So
All right. Well, I'll bring the dinner. I owe you that.
that'll be fun. Yeah, we'll do that. I'm excited to watch the race. I mean, I hate that term. It's not the greatest betting race, but it might not be, but to me, it's still an exciting race. It's a little bit of a chess match with those jockeys, seeing what they're going to do. I think, something you said earlier, Ed, is kind of interesting, that if there was in-race betting, this would be a great race to be able to bet once they're going into that first turn, because I think we'll know a lot more than we do right now going into that first turn. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And for me, it comes down to, like you said, Dan, Johnny's got to get out and hustle and
Well, I'm glad Dan mentioned the pick 5 being good, because that might just be where to look.
Yeah, no, and you know, the way I play, if that's a sequence that I've got a bunch of prices early, okay, and that I'm keying on, or a race where even I've got 2 or 3 horses and they're all prices or a big price single, I could see putting strategic mission on my ticket then, because then it doesn't matter. I could say, hey, if I get alive to this race, I'm going to let you know, Godolphin, Brad Cox, and a potential monster beat me when
Right.
you know, I know he could sweep past me turning for home and just, you know, blow me all up. So, you know, I don't hedge, but I'll hedge there by saying I haven't done the sequence yet. So just based on analyzing this race alone, those are the 2 that I would
Yeah.
go with.
I'm the
If
same way.
if I've got room, I'm going to be like, hey, I'm not going to let this horse, you know, blow me up. That's for sure.
Now, I use the all button way more than I should overall, but there is no universe where I'm ever punching all in this race.
Listen, I curse Stan every time. I never use the all button. I get knocked out so many times with 8 out of 10, 9 out of 12, and every time I curse Dan, because we did a show once about use or not use the all button, and I gave 1,000,001 reasons why I never do it, and every time it burns me, and it happens more often than you would think. And I have a
Oh, I
theory.
know.
I I don't think it's luck or anything like that. I think it's on those races when you have to use 9 or 10 out of 12 to be comfortable, you really don't have an opinion. So you're more apt to get beat, you know? So that's what I
right.
equate it to, but I get burned with that move all the time. And I'm slowly, you know, it's hard for me, that hard head. Ed, you're Italian, so you understand that stubbornness that we have in us for some reason. I can't get to it, but I've been getting burned so much without doing it. I think there's going to be a point where I succumb and say, you know what? I'm using all in this race, and I'm not going to get burned by that one second. It happened to me
Well,
recently. I don't remember
Chase
who
the
it was.
Chaos can burn me this time. It's just,
Yeah,
can't have a dime.
no, I agree with that. All the Preakness ain't an all race. We know that. That's for sure.
The all race will be the 10th when you guys open it up. You'll see it. The
Is it
all
a
race
turf-
is the
is it
five
a turf
furlongs
sprint?
on the turf.
Yeah, no,
Five-
I
5
get
on the
burned at
turf,
those
and the
all the
whole
time.
field can win.
Yeah,
It's a great all race, the 10th race, to start the pick 4 and the second leg of the pick 5. And then those 2 dirt sprints. I like leaning to outside horses, and the favorites are on the inside in the 9th. So I might be able to get lucky and start with a $20 winner with Jose Ortiz to start the pick 5. And then if I can get Jose home into all, then look out.
right. Yeah, sounds like a plan. Gentlemen, always a pleasure.
For
Um,
sure.
Maybe we'll do it
All
again
right,
for the
guys.
Belmont. Maybe we'll do it again for the Belmont if our schedules permit.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
we'll see how we do. So,
All right.
Buck, enjoy Preakness Day.
All right. See you guys.
Same.
All
Good
right,
luck,
guys.
everybody.
Ciao.
Tracking trips with Pick 6 King John Stettin. It's one of the best tools in horse racing for any level of player. It's your second set of eyes, spotting troubled trips, betting angles, track trends, horses to watch and favorites to fade, 10 figs, ticket structure, and more. At Tracking Trips, you're a friend with benefits. Not a member? You must hate winning money. Join Tracking Trips now. Visit pastthewire.com and we'll see you in the winner's circle. Remember, nobody does it better.
Florida Derby. After 3 quarters in 112-1, Known Agenda is now on to take over the lead. It's Known Agenda for St. Elias Stable. Florida Derby winner, Known Agenda.
Dan Oman here with some exciting news. DRF Formulator, the gold standard in past performance information, is now free exclusively on DRF Bets. Join DRF Bets with the promo code WINNING. Get a $250 first deposit match bonus, a $10 free bet, and free Formulator already uploaded to your account. Access Formulator's premium features, including sortable trainer stats, race replays, personalized trip notes, and lots more. Free Formulator exclusively on DRF Bets.
Nobody does it better.